Donald Trump's tariffs are working, and they're working well, because as Mark Carney's team's going down to the US, continuing to get nothing done, we have panels on TV now saying Canada should adopt USD and basically create a partnership similar to the EU between the US and Canada. And I think that makes sense. And it better happen quickly, because another company just announced they will be moving down to the US from Canada with major job losses. So Canada continues to lose jobs. The amount of exports is plummeting, and that's causing the separation talk from Alberta to heat up. So even with all of that news going on, for some reason, we're seeing an increase in asylum claims from Americans coming into Canada, even though we know immigration's a large part of the problem, which means I have to call out Pierre a little bit in this video, because there is a story that proves me right in two different ways. Not only are Canadian immigrants going to cause a problem for Canadians, as an immigrant was just caught spying in the US, which vindicates my other point as well, that 600,000 Chinese students filing into the US is maybe not a good idea. Spy story is at the end of this video, so stick around for that, because it's pretty crazy. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it.
You just represent all of Canada here.
Well, no, look, I do business in both countries. You know, I've got American kids, but I do investments up in Alberta, and here's what happened. Carney is really good because he used the whole Trump elbows up strategy to win against a conservative who was 32% ahead of him. And then he said, look, Trump is the enemy, and I'm going to save us. And it worked. But he just missed it by 3 seats. He has a minority mandate.
Okay, so here's what he's saying. Yes, what Mark Carney did with his political play was the right choice to win an election in Canada. However, it was a horrible choice to try and get a trade deal done with the US. So yeah, he was good at winning the election. If you want to just give him credit for that, absolutely. I will not give him credit for any other economic decision that has been done since.
In a Canadian parliamentary system, you can't get anything done unless you have a majority mandate. So what I predict will happen is we'll get another election, and one of these guys, which are so close, are going to win a majority.
Who do you think will challenge him?
Well, he has to challenge the conservatives named Pierre Poilievre.
Okay.
So one of those two guys has to win a majority mandate, because that's the only way you can actually execute policy. But right now, the pressure point is on softwood lumber. The rest of the stuff is CUSMA. That's the existing agreement. There are no tariffs. No tariffs out of Alberta oil. And if you took the Alberta oil out of the equation, there is no trade deficit with Canada. That is the cheapest oil America gets out of Alberta, and they have more nat gas than the entire United States.
So he is right about the lumber. Like, Canada's lumber is getting absolutely crushed right now, but he didn't mention that Canada's canola industry is also getting smoked, which is way larger than lumber by like a lot. So, you know, I think it's definitely a sticking point, but it's not the sticking point.
That's a lot of power up there. But they got to solve for softwood lumber, because that's the housing industry, and Trump knows it for housing. That's billions of dollars a month of softwood lumber now jammed up at 35% tariff. So that's why Carney dropped the retaliation, and now he's saying to Trump, look, elbows down, let's cut a deal. And that's what's going to happen, and that'll be good, because a reciprocal tariff with Canada of 10-15% would be great. And it would be good for both sides, and I would be happy, because I'm trying to do business in both places.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I said, look, give us the deal that Europe got, because not only did they remove, you know, as that deal's been developing, they're removing tariffs from autos and all sorts of things. The economic powerhouse that US and Canada could be, especially if Canada just adopts USD. But
Carney's smart. He's going to figure that out. He's no longer using Trump as the adversary guy up in Canadian politics.
I agree with that. I mean, I think that's why he won. Poilievre probably should have won. He won because he was the guy who could say, I'm against Trump more than the other guy. But so it's interesting.
Yeah, that is true.
The Canadians are saying, well, look at Carney. He's capitulating on this right now. I don't think he's capitulating, actually. I think what he's realizing is that he's never held the cards. He's never had the leverage on this. Enough time has passed that he can actually deal with Trump according to the leverage he has and the leverage he doesn't have. And I think if he's smart, he'll actually...
So I'm not sure if he's realizing he never had the leverage. I think the biggest thing is he knows he never had the leverage, the entire thing. And this is why Canadians should be mad. And honestly, Americans should be mad, because he created this discourse to get Canadians and Americans angry at each other just so he could win an election, when he always knew, oh, there's no chance Canada could take on the US. Well, that means what he did was nefarious. It was evil, right?
Actually he'll say, look, let's cut the best deal that we can, and he won't have to fight the battle with Poilievre again. I mean, he's trying to solidify long-term leadership here. If he gets a good deal with the U.S., I think he sets himself up personally really well, and that's sort of how I read this situation.
It's always so interesting when an American on a panel has a good idea about the Canadian political landscape, and he does, like, he's right. I do think if Mark Carney somehow nails a great deal, I don't think Pierre's going to come in and win. Mark Carney still polls really high.
Well, the key is if he gets a good deal and he has that momentum, he should call an election, because the history of Canadian parliamentary politics is that if you don't win a majority, 12 to 18 months is the longest you're in power for, without calling an election. So the minute he cuts a deal, let's say it's a 10% reciprocal, boom, call an election, solidify your majority mandate.
That's what I think he's actually.
I think you're right.
We're kind of talking around the elephant in the room. What's the economy like in Canada?
Oh, we'll be getting into that. Oh, we will be getting into that.
Take all this stuff out.
But you got to remember, the economy was under the idiot king for 10 years.
I know, but he is like the idiot king in many ways. Carney is. He is. I mean,
not the same.
He's
He's
both
not
globalists, and
Carney has executional skills Trudeau doesn't have.
So first of all, absolutely shout out. Yes, they are both globalists. They're both, and which is important, and why I think Pierre's only chance of actually winning an election again is getting serious about immigration and change, which we will talk about later. So I'm not going to talk about that too much now. But shout out, calling him a globalist. Also, Kevin O'Leary, even though he clearly wants a deal done, he is backing Carney way too much. Like, no, Carney's got execution. He's really smart. Here we are, 170 days into Carney being prime minister, and we don't have one major project or anything. Nothing started. So where's the execution?
You work for Mike Bloomberg, so maybe.
Well, I know you may have a dim opinion of him.
No, I don't. I'm just saying that it seems like more of the same. And at some point, they're going to have to talk policy when Trump isn't the boogeyman anymore, and the center left policies.
The real answer between these two economies is no tariffs and merge the economies. Canada has all the raw materials the overall North American economy needs, and we got to get together to fight the Chinese. I don't know what we're talking about. It should be, the indigenous population of both.
So just before he gets into that, yes, absolutely. Taking on China, taking on all these separate powers. And I was even saying that just in yesterday's video, the amount of raw materials that Canada could supply to the US, aka the largest economy in the world, aka larger than the next 4 economies after that. So yes, obviously Canada and the US working together to build Fortress America. We would take on China, Russia. BRICS wouldn't even stand a chance if Canada and the U.S. built a strong partnership like that, especially factoring in Mexico. Hola, mamacitas, ¿qué pasa?
The U.S. and Canada, there's no border for them. They can move anywhere they want, anytime, both ways. Let's check each other's people out, give a cross-border passport, merge the economies, standardize on the U.S. dollar even. Why not? Everything's priced in U.S. dollars in Canadian economies. And boom, let's go fight the Chinese.
I agree 100% with that sentiment there, especially with the new China spying news that we got at the end of the video. Because once I saw that, I'm going, whoa. And he makes the important point. We need to check out each other's people. So we need to make sure that the immigrants who are getting brought into Canada, which I think should be 0, are so vetted and so checked that there's no chance of this spying happening, or else Canada is going to ruin the potential deal. Speaking of potential deal, here's how hilarious the meeting was.
Is following developments. Mackenzie.
Some progress was made on Tuesday when the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister sat down with the U.S. Commerce Secretary, according to Dominic LeBlanc's office. But he isn't sticking around Washington for additional talks, Donna, flying back to Canada after just one 90-minute meeting. The top Canadian and U.S. representatives are now handing off talks to lower-level negotiators to try and hash out more technical issues, according to LeBlanc's team.
Dominic LeBlanc is a goof. He's a fool. He's a big old dummy. So the fact that he's there, he does one 90-minute meeting, that's the best you can do. This is obviously the largest issue outside of immigration that Canada needs fixed right now. Then you leave, and you're going to leave it with lower level negotiators. What's really happening is this guy's a figurehead. He's a politician who was voted in, who likely has no idea how to actually get a trade deal done. That's why nothing's happening. So the low level negotiators are the people who are like, yeah, you understand economics. I also do. Yeah, you understand what we should probably get done here. And this guy's obviously just a politician and a dummy. Yeah, okay, let's work together on this. With the 2 largest issues being the U.S. trade deal, the other one is immigration. And part of the Alberta separation is immigration talk is heating up. It's part of the reasons for what's going on.
I'm sure, like, you know, whether there was a really concerted effort to get UCP supporters out to this Lethbridge Alberta Next panel. There were some disturbing applause on comments about limiting immigration. We really haven't seen, the kind of populism that we practice in this province leaning towards anti-immigrant sentiments in this way, and I think that's pretty worrying.
If you're curious, yes, she is a university professor who they're bringing on as an expert. She finds it disturbing and worrying that they're talking about limiting immigration. Not even zero immigration, not even deportation, remigration, the real things that need to happen. Canada is so far broken that this dumb old lady who clearly does not care about the next generation is disturbed and worried that we might limit immigration. Lady, you're 100 years old. Obviously, you know Canada didn't used to immigrate millions of people a year, but it's also leading to more of the Alberta tensions, and we can see with these announcements, with all these talks, there is a legitimate chance, especially if talks of a union starts with adopting USD, because for some reason the Alberta separatists want their own dollar. Don't do an Alberta dollar, do USD. It would make no sense to do an Alberta dollar for you Alberta separatists. I support the movement if you want to leave. Just use USD. Have you liked the video yet? We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We're trying to grow the channel. If you like what we talk about here, feel free to subscribe. All the new subscribers, all the new channel members, everybody who signed up, thank you. Let's get back to it.
To go to Ottawa. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years.
Not only do they vote Liberal, Quebec's trying to leave all the time.
$600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal.
Yep, the Liberals use government handouts to buy a lot of their votes. Obviously, the immigration number growing doesn't hurt their cause either. But we've seen, even with all of this government spending, we're losing companies, we're losing jobs because our economy is doing horrible and Trump's tariffs are working. And we got this huge announcement. Crown Royal Bottler closing down in Ontario plant, moving operations to the U.S. That's breaking just from today. Spirits maker Diageo will cease operations in its bottling facility in Amherstburg, Ontario early next year as it shifts some bottling volume to the U.S. The facility, which bottles Crown Royal products, will close in February on a move aimed at improving its North American supply chain. AKA, they don't want to deal with tariffs and they want access to the U.S. market, and about 200 jobs will be affected. That is massive. I know it only sounds like 200 jobs, but like I said in the other video, death by 1,000 cuts. That's 200 families who are affected. Their communities affected. They're not going to be able to pay their bills now. And that is because Canada will not get a deal done with the US. Not only that, as we're getting into the job stuff, you'll see the government's printing all the jobs. So losing private sector jobs as these families are getting affected is horrible. And this is why any of the elbows up Canadians need to give their head a shake. Texas is richer than Canada. GDP per capita is $83K in Texas and it's $52K in Canada. Texas builds it, owns it, scales it, and Canada funds it and watches it leave. Not only that, he's talking about GDP per capita. I looked it up today, and the new numbers are showing Texas is on pace to beat Canada in overall GDP. So as Canada is using quantitative peopling by Operation Curry Bomb, bringing in unlimited Indians, it's not even working. And as these blows continue to get dealt, we now have small businesses getting smoked. And I wanted to show this story because it's going to be how we ended up in the horrible economic position that we're in, I'm going to get into.
Montreal online sellers are warning their American customers they will have to start charging duties on small parcels, and they are worried about the effect on their business. It is the case of this business on Saint Laurent. Here's what it is about. Until now, parcels that are worth less than $800 have been exempt from U.S. duties. It is called the de minimis exemption. But that's about to change after an executive order signed by President Donald Trump in July that goes into effect on Friday. Most goods entering the U.S. from Canada will be charged a 35% duty.
That's insane when you think probably most of small businesses in Canada's parcels will be under $800.
Canada Post, the founders of fabric supplier Core Fabrics, took to social media to warn about the changes.
I don't think that's likely that we would lose so much of our sales, but I think they're going to go down quite a bit. I'd love to know. We'll find out.
And you feel horrible because she's just some small business owner, although she's from Quebec, so she probably voted for the Bloc or for the Liberals. And these were the trade deficits we were getting before the small business got hit like this. Canada's current account trade deficit Q1 was pretty much break even. That being said, that's when people were front loading a lot of their orders from Canadian companies, and everybody expected a pullback, but I don't think everybody expected this large, almost $20 billion in increased trade deficits, all because Carney had to be elbows up to win the election. So Canadians did this. Canadians who voted for Carney, who led to him being anti-Trump, anti-American, who chose to divide Canada and say, we need to take on the US, you guys get to put that on your resume. And Canada has been kicking the can for years. This is why we can't blame Donald Trump. We can blame Justin Trudeau. Yet again, he does not get to run away scot-free on this. And we can absolutely blame Mark Carney and all of the elbows up because Canada's annual job growth barely above zero in June, payroll survey shows. But it's actually even worse than it sounds at face value because getting into this chart here, payroll survey shows just how weak Canada's job market is. Again, these were all numbers before the tariffs. We can see major downtrend, okay? This has been since January 2023. Canada was on the downtrend. Well, let's look at these two numbers. Well, basically, this red number here, whatever you want to call that, burgundy, maroon, if you will, is the total employment number. And you go, oh, look, it's just above zero. We're not at zero. Oh, well, what is this blue number? Oh, so this blue number is excluding healthcare and public administration? Because you remove most of what's bringing up the red line, which is government spending and government jobs. This is all public sector. We've been saying this forever. The only reason Canada has any semblance of an economy because of our horrible government mismanagement is we pumped in millions of immigrants and government spending. And that led to, of course, inflated asset prices, which allowed people to borrow, blah, blah, blah. But it was immigration, Operation Curry Bomb, quantitative peopling, and public sector jobs. And as we're seeing job contraction, we're still bringing in tens of thousands of immigrants. And that's why it was so wacky that we got this article here, which is Americans seeking refugee status in Canada on the rise since Trump's return. We're going to get into the chart here because, funny enough, there were Americans piling into Canada. I mean, look, it's 869, 642, 423. That was during Trump's first term. But here's the thing. They were claiming asylum, fake asylum. Go kick rocks, pal. Because if you're coming as an American claiming asylum in Canada, all you're doing is bogging down our system. And our system is busy. It is needed because we have really important things going on, like India claiming 41,698 asylum and refugee claims in Canada, all because of, let's see, economic scamming. Oh, what a surprise. The Indians are choosing to scam Canada's system economically. And like Daniel Boardman said, every single refugee claim from India is fake and should be denied. Anyone who had a claim from India accepted should have it stripped and be deported. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. There should be no Indian in Canada on a refugee or asylum claim. It's insane, especially because all the Google CEOs who like to freak out online are talking about how safe India is, how awesome India is. India's perfect. There's nothing wrong with India. We're the ones who are wrong. We're just dumb and stupid. But for some reason, they got to come claim asylum here. But this is why I need to call out Pierre, because look at this article from CTV. Polyev says temporary foreign workers taking jobs from young Canadians. Okay, they're already running hit pieces on Pierre. All he said was, as our young people have a quarter-century high in their unemployment, Mark Carney this year is expecting to bring in a record number of temporary foreign workers to take the jobs of Canadian youth. That was the total statement. It was so mild. It was economically based. There was nothing inflammatory about it. He's already getting hit pieces for being anti-immigration. Pierre, if you're watching this, no matter what you say about immigration, they're going to go after you for it. Dive in, stand on business, 10 toes down, because you may as well. I want people to know, just a couple short years ago, here's how pro-immigration Pierre was. And before you guys say he changed, this was during peak immigration. There was millions of Indians coming to Canada at this time. He was pandering for votes. If he does not get serious and actually talk about deportations, remigration, getting serious, they're gonna ruin him in the media. He's competing against the media anyways.
The letters on the front end and said that they were problematic, told the students to get better, accurate, real admission letters in the beginning. And then we wouldn't be in this mess here today. And then 4 years later, they come along and say that that the Trudeau government is going to kick the students out of Canada. The solution is obvious. End the deportations, allow everyone who applied honestly but who was defrauded to continue to keep their work or study permit, and allow them to apply just like everyone else to become permanent residents. That's what.
No, and Pierre, that announcement has always made me mad, and this is why even before the election, I told everybody, Pierre's not anti-immigration. Here he is saying, oh, those poor little babies who got defrauded, and they did get their permits, we'll let them stay. First of all, they're scammers too. There's no such thing as an honest sucker, because any of these people who got scammed knew they were scamming. What the difference is, the scam didn't pay off. They thought they were jumping to the front of the line, they're guaranteed jobs, and they're gonna, oh, you get to do whatever you want, we'll get you to the front. Sorry you tried to scam your way in and it didn't work, Gurpreet.
What I'm calling for. Stop the deportations. Listen, we have a worker shortage in Canada.
Yeah, there's the Google CEOs we need, the worker shortage we need. I can't believe he even specifically said, stop the deportations. They're not supposed to be here.
We have a demographic problem. Our population is too old. We need 700 young people. We need 700 young people to work in our factories, in our hospitals, in our shopping centers, driving truck, being accountants, lawyers, doctors. We need...
No, we don't need them, Pierre. What we need is Canadians doing lots of sex, making lots of babies, because we can hold off, and I'll show you in a sec.
These workers in our country. It makes no sense for Canada to
have 1 billion Indians, Operation Curry Bomb.
Send them back when they could stay here and earn powerful paychecks and raise their families in peace.
All right, you guys get it. He's pandering to the Indian community. They probably left the event to get in their trucks and get in a massive traffic accident anyways. But here is a new article coming out. It says a new paper finds that no evidence that aging or declining populations harm the social and economic performance of countries. One of the most commonly used justifications for mass immigration just evaporated. Thank you, Riley Donovan. And sorry, Talking Point, you're out of here. We are going to get a recession once we cut immigration. Everybody needs to be prepared for that. No evidence aging or declining populations compromise socioeconomic performance of countries. Concerns about declining or aging populations often center in the fear that fewer people will translate to a weaker economy and lower living standards. But these fears are frequently based on an oversimplified or misapplied interpretations of economic models and appear to be driven more by political agendas rather than evidence. Oh, what a surprise! In reality, long-term prosperity depends more on how societies invest in education, skills, technology, not just how many people they have. Okay, which leads me to this final story, which proves every single thing I said in this video, plus shutting down the Chinese idea. Canadian deported from US after admitting to drone spying at Florida Space Force Base. A Canadian man, okay, Canadian, put it in quotes please, has pled guilty to illegally photographing classified US defense facilities at the Space Force military base in Cape Canaveral, Florida. I can't even say his name. So before we call this guy Canadian, who moved to Canada when he was 50, who lives in Brampton, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of unlawful photographing of military installations without authorization on 3 separate days in early January. So here we have a multi-decade Canadian who was spying on behalf of China. Great. But something I found really, really funny, actually. Pan worked as a Best Buy Canada technician for 18 years until retirement in 2022. If you went into the Best Buy where he was working at during that time, I would get your devices checked for any sort of spyware, because what are the chances that the Chinese spy was working in the tech center as a technician getting to work on all the devices? All I'm saying is that's a little suspicious. There you have it. Canada and the US need to build an incredibly strong economic partnership so we can take on the world. Nobody could beat Fortress America. It's going to start with deportations and remigrations in Canada, so we can say we have a safe society again, that we can remove barriers so that it's way easier for Canada and the US to work together. This could be amazing, especially as Canada is floundering. We're going to get sold for pennies on the dollar to the US anyways. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are trying to get these videos out in front of more people, try and grow the channel. If you want to support the channels, there's a link to do that down below. You can do it through YouTube as well. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.